Hi, I'm Chad with Move For a Guitar. This lesson is from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to memorize the notes on your fretboard by playing scales up and down on one string. First off, if you like all the diagrams from this series, including the diagrams from this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, Memorize Guitar Notes. But I am working on it right now as I'm filming this lesson, so it might not be available as you're watching the lesson. But once it is available, a link will pop up on the screen that'll allow you to download it. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to download it when it is available. This is part 13 from our series, How to Memorize Guitar Notes. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So here's another exercise that will not only help you memorize the notes on your fretboard, but it will also help you memorize the major scale and the minor pentatonic scale up and down the fretboard and break you free from having to visualize patterns when you play those scales. So this is not only going to help you memorizing the notes, but it's really going to help you in improvising or playing solos, etc. So we're going to start with the C major scale, which, as you should know at this point, contains all the natural notes up and down your fretboard. So instead of breaking this up into patterns like we did before, for example, if we were to break this up into pattern 1, it would be right here, which is going through all your strings vertically on your fretboard. Now we're just going to go horizontally, but on one string at a time. And this is a really important thing to practice, whether you're memorizing the notes on your fretboard or whether you're just practicing scales. It's really important to practice horizontally, going this way instead of just vertically, which a lot of guitarists get stuck into playing vertically and not playing horizontally. So for now, we're going to start with the second string because the second string starts with the C major scale, starting with the C as a root note closest to the headstock. So it just gives us more room to visualize what we're doing. And we can start with the root of the C major scale, which is obviously C, and play it up one octave to the next root. And as you play it, say the names of the notes as you're going. So play and say C, play and say D, and so on. And of course, it's just the major scale, so you're just going in your whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So play it up doing that, and then play it back down doing the same thing. Next, instead of just starting with the root, we're going to start with the lowest note we can get on that string. So on the second string, the lowest note that's in the C major scale, or that's a natural note, is the open string. It's the B note. And now we're going to go as high as we can reach, which will just depend how many frets your guitar has. You might not be able to reach as high, or you might be able to reach higher. And do the exact same things. Play and say B, play and say C, play and say D, all the way up as high as you can reach, and then all the way back down. So technically it's still a C major scale, but you're not starting on the root or ending on the root. So it's not going to sound like the C major scale as much as what I showed you to do when you're first starting out, which was starting with the C, going up to the next C, and then back down to the C. That's really going to sound like the major scale. But it's important to be able to visualize all the notes up and down the fretboard, not just visualizing it around the C, especially when we're using this to memorize the notes on the fretboard. So really you could start with the second string, but it doesn't really matter. You could start with any string. First, you could start with the first C that you can reach, go up as high as you can go, and if you can reach the next C, you can do that and then go back down. Or you might have to, if you run out of room, start on C, for example, go to G, if that's as high as you can reach, and then go back down here and go to the A and back up to the C. Then once you can revolve it around the C, then just start with the lowest note that you can reach, which in the major scale, the C major scale with the natural notes, is always going to be your open string. So if you're on the sixth string, just start with E, play and say E, play and say F, all the way up as high as you can reach, all the way back down. Then do it on the fifth string. You could start with C and play the C major scale up an octave, back down. Once you can do that, start with the lowest note you can reach, which is the open string, and go through all the strings doing that. And it's just really important as you're doing this to do it slowly and not just do it by muscle memory. It's really easy to build muscle memory and then not really pay attention to where these notes are lying on your fretboard. So as you're going, do it really slowly, and for example, visualize where this G lands, where it is on this fret marker. Visualize where the A is with the fret marker, where the B is with the fret marker, where the C is, where it's between two fret markers, and so on. And do that on every string, so you're really visualizing where these notes are landing, not just building muscle memory and playing this fast. That's not the goal of this exercise. We're still talking about memorizing the notes on your guitar, so the goal is to do it slowly and visualize where these notes land. Then once you can play from the lowest note up to the highest note that you can reach on one string and back down in order, next what you're going to do is what's called playing intervallically. And you don't have to worry about what the intervals are. Really, all you have to do, for example, if you're on the 6th string, start with your E, and this time instead of going to F, skip to G next. So you'd play E, then you'd play G. So E would be 1, G would be 2. Then you'd go back down to F, so F would be 3, and then you'd skip G and go to A, so A would be 4. So you'd play E, skip to G, go back down to F, skip G, go back up to A, and then next you would go back to G, so that would be 5, and then skip to B and so on. So you're just playing the note, skipping, going back to the next note in order, then skipping, going back to the next note, then skipping, and so on. And that's what's called playing in thirds, but you don't have to worry about that if you don't understand what that means. You just do that, and that's really going to help you visualize where these notes are landing and not just have to play it in order. And this will also help you for improvising, because playing intervallically is really important to be able to play the intervals. Next, you can skip 2 notes. So you'd play E, then you'd skip all the way to A, then you'd play F, then you'd skip all the way to B, then you play G, you'd skip all the way to C, and so on. And that's what's called playing in fourths, which again, don't worry about what that means if you don't understand, but that's going to really help you visualize where these notes are landing. And of course, when you're doing this, play and say the note name. It's really important that anytime you're working on an exercise to memorize the notes, that you play and say the note name as you play it. And I should have mentioned, for any of these, once you get to the highest note, then you do the opposite. So you'd start here on, for example, if the highest note you could reach was A, you'd play A, go down to F, then you'd play G, go down to E, then you'd play F, go down to D, and so on. And these will probably be really familiar sounds to you if you've never played like this before. You'll probably recognize these sounds and hear how it's a sequence, it's a pattern. And then you can keep skipping notes and doing the same, so you could do from E, this time all the way to B, and then back to F, all the way to C, and so on. And that would be called fifths. And then just do it as high as you can go on your fretboard. So you could go from E to D, and then back to F to E, and so on. Depending how many frets you have, you're going to run out of room really quick when you start skipping a lot of notes. But that's going to be really helpful for you, not only, like I said, for memorizing these notes, but in improvising and a lot of stuff you'll do in the future. So it's really worth doing this. After you can play those intervals, you can then just not play any sort of pattern. And for example, you could just start with an E, then you could play all the way up to this G, then you could go down to this E, maybe up to this F, and just say the note names as you're playing them, but just do it randomly. You're not playing any sort of pattern, any sort of sequence. You're just randomly hitting these notes. That's really going to lock in where they are and be a big benefit to you if you do that. And of course, do it on every string. Don't just do it on the 6th string. And then once you can do it with the natural notes, which is the C major scale, then do it with the sharps and flats, which are either the E flat minor pentatonic scale or the D sharp minor pentatonic scale. Exact same scale, just different name. They're enharmonic equivalents. And again, just start on one string. You could start with the E flat if you're playing E flat minor pentatonic, and go up 1 octave and back down, playing and saying the notes as you go. And then eventually, whatever string you're on, just go to the lowest note that you can reach to the highest note and back down. And then you're not going to have as many options for skipping notes with the pentatonic scale, because you only have 5 notes and there's already some bigger intervals in it. But you can still do it. You could start, for example, with G flat, go to B flat, back to A flat to G flat, and so on. There's many ways that you can do it, which you'll be more limited with this. And then do it randomly. Just, for example, play G flat, up to E flat, down to D flat, up to B flat, down to A flat, to G flat, whatever. And just say the note names as you're doing it to really lock in and visualize where these land. And the flats and sharps are harder than the natural notes for most guitarists, so this is really beneficial for you to play the sharps and flats and really spend time visualizing where they land. And for example, on the 6th string, you notice that instead of it being G, A, B on the dots, it's G flat, A flat, B flat before the dot. So here's the dot, here's the dot, here's the dot, your fret markers. So these are all landing before those dots. So just really visualize where these notes land. And then once you do it as E flat minor, do it as D sharp minor, which, like I said, it's the same notes. They're just enharmonic equivalents, but it's really important to understand that an F sharp, for example, is the same thing as a G flat. And like I said, once you do this, this is going to open up tons of doors for you, not only memorizing your notes, but for improvising as well. This will really be beneficial to you. And playing the major scale, the C major scale, and the E flat minor or D sharp minor pentatonic scale, you've covered all the notes up and down your fretboard. But eventually you could switch to other keys and do the same thing. So instead of being C major scale, for example, you could do G major scale, which G major scale has a lot of the same notes as C major scale, but obviously not all the same notes because it's a different scale, a different key. So it's important to do that. That'll really open up your eyes to where the notes land as well, but also really help you memorizing the other scales as well, not just being stuck with the C major scale or the E flat minor pentatonic scale. For example, with minor pentatonic, you could do A minor pentatonic, B minor pentatonic, and so on. So that's how you can memorize the notes by playing scales on one string up and down the fretboard. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to show you how you can memorize the notes using what are called note clusters. And be sure to download the e-guide. All the diagrams are in there, and be sure to subscribe because we add at least one new lesson every day.